Well, if you're like me, you've probably benefited once or twice from other people's YouTube posts or bothering people on social media to get a few tips or tricks or watch installs. I'm going to try to pay forward and share what I did on this 2022 3500 HD. This is my overland rig, not a daily driver, and I'll show you what I ended up doing. So I actually did the install about a week or so ago, maybe 10 days ago. And I installed the MXT575 from Midland. And what I'm doing today is following up. I've been waiting for this to come from Midland. They were out of stock for a few days there, a few weeks. It's an extension for the microphone. The goal here is to get the microphone out from where the radio is inside the console and run that extension down here into the pocket that's on the side of the console for a cleaner, neater look, and cords not hanging over the center console and drink holders. So since I'm opening up the panels to run that extension, not too difficult for me to backtrack and show you the install without recording the whole darn thing. I opted to install the radio inside the center console bucket here. It's pretty darn big, lots of room. I don't feel like I gave up any space underneath. It's nice and deep, so not a problem in my mind running it here. Again, I just don't like the microphone cord extended all the way out and hanging out across. The radio is mounted inside the box here on the Midland mount, and I just used 3 hex head self-tapping little screws. Went right in, nice and secure. That's not going anywhere, doesn't vibrate, doesn't make any noise. So with Midland's option to turn on the speaker in the microphone set or the speaker inside the console, I'm going to try that option for a little while before investing in an external speaker. I think this will be plenty. Of course, you certainly can turn up the volume. Not going to be a problem. I ran the electric and the antenna cable up through the bottom front corner of the console box. This happened to be here from a previous project on this truck when I ran the controller for my rear airbags. I've since upgraded to a remote system and a bigger airbag, but the hole obviously still there and makes it easy for me to retrieve things. That feeds directly forward and underneath the big tray here, and today we'll get that extension cord run up and come out right through there once again. Okay, none of this is necessary for today's work of doing that extension for the microphone on the Midland radio, but in the spirit of backtracking and showing you that install, thought I'd go back, pull the driver's side fuse panel so you can see where I ran wires. First of all, the Midland will come with these I terminals made for running on a post, and of course I'm not going to do that here, so I ended up cutting that thing off. And in some of my scrap electric, I found an old small sleeve that fit perfectly on some of the empty terminals, and I just soldered and did a little heat shrink there. And then I'm going to run it, you'll see while it was, run down in here to these empty HOTS unutilized fuse spots there. And then the ground, conveniently, there is a factory ground right there under the kick panel, underneath that fuse. As you pull the plastic trim and carpet along that kick panel, you'll see that is a 10 millimeter, of course, right? That's a 10 millimeter socket to get behind that nut for the ground. If you're looking for options to run your antenna cable, there are places, factory places under the floorboard. That front one right there goes through the floorboard. We've run some wires from battery to switches to some stuff on the back overland package, and then this is also a factory sealed floorboard access. The purple wires are mine, as I ran the amp steps a few months ago. I also showed you there's some options underneath the carpet here under the floorboard. A couple places, factory holes that you could run that antenna cable, say if you're running something towards the back of your rig, maybe to a tire carrier or some sort of mount, bed mount, if you weren't going to go up the A-pillar. For me, this kit came with the magnet mount, and I don't have much of an option for a roof mount with the overhead sleeper and articulating top. So the magnet mount that came with this kit, plus I did a bundle package where I opted for the higher gain antenna, I think will suit me just fine. So it was a pretty easy run getting it up onto the hood there, the wires, through an existing hole in the floorboard. I'll see if I can't get under there with a headlamp and show you running the leads now from the fuse panel and from that ground I showed you, running it over and up out of the way into the center console. That's where I'll head next. Okay, see if I can tuck up in here. You can see there's the power, and the ground should be right there with it. There it is. And then I just opted zip tied along as we go. I have access to the fuses. Those are the fuses. It's there they are. Those are the fuses that are part of the Midland wiring harness. I have access right there above the heater port on the driver's side, and I just ran it zip tied up over some other harnesses, factory harnesses, and then it drops down in behind the side panel, and we'll go there next. Okay, I'm going to remove the microphone and get it out of our way so that we're not having to fight that or do anything we don't want to do. So the goal is we're going to get this extension from there to there. Hopefully that's the plan, is to bring it out through here, and that way the cord will just hang nice and straight from the microphone mount and out of the way of the ignition switch and out of the way of my feet and out of the way of everything in the console. Okay, again, we're working on a 2022 Chevy 3500 pickup, and I would certainly validate yourself. Don't take my word for it, but I want to say that I think 2020 plus year models are going to be very similar. I'm even thinking the 1500 models have a console something like this. So if your console looks like this, this ought to get you at least close to what you need. But I really would encourage you to make sure you're dealing with the right model year before you start popping and pulling side panels. This panel right here that runs beside the gas pedal and all the way back behind your seat and under the box where the radio's installed, that's one piece that will come off. This decorative piece right here, at least on my LTZ trim, it's a separate piece that comes off. Behind here, this piece, I'll just call it the tray. It runs from under the center console dashboard all the way to the rear, and your vents, if you have rear seats, your vents come out on the end of that. That's a third piece, and then there's a fourth piece that you can see the seam right here coming down. That seam, I'll call that the top piece that has the tray inside and your drink holders. That's a fourth piece, and so you'll see all of that as we work on bringing this out, and I'll show you on the passenger side what that looks like. A note here, there's no need for this install, or if you're running wires underneath into this, what I was calling the tray, to either get to a rear seat or to come out through your storage box piece of the console. Your drink holder does not need to come out, nor this big tray here. Some of you may have the phone charger piece. I don't have the phone charger on my trim package, but you'll see when we pull this, there's a wire harness for a key fob reprogramming device buried in here, and I believe the same electronics, if you were to get or already have the phone charger piece for the center tray, that will also wire up underneath this top piece, the fourth piece I mentioned. So let's go around and I'll show you what some of the disassembled pieces look like. All right, we're over on the passenger side. I wanted to show you, first of all, there's one difference. If you recall seeing up front, and you'll see it when I go back there to take it apart. Up front on the driver's side, there was a little pop-out panel, and behind that there'll be a bolt. On the passenger side, not so. It's just the metal clips that pop into the rectangular receiving holes that are inside. The clips I'm talking about, you're probably familiar with. Typically, it's the metal clip that kind of slides over the plastic extensions on these trim pieces. You can see I've already pulled the trim piece off of here. I want to show you one other thing, as long as I have this panel off already, and before I forget, if you look right here, I'll see if I can create some light for you. There we go. This plastic piece, if you can see, and the gap underneath, that's the only piece that's different than all metal clips, and of course the bolt on the driver's side front by the toe kick. That piece, if I can get you some good light here, slides in right here. And the way this works, once you start popping the metal clips out from around it and a little bit behind it, you're going to want to put a little bend in this. I'll see if I can't show you that. I'm going to have to prop up the phone. I'll try that here in a minute. But it has to slide forward for install. And when you're trying to pull this panel off, like I said, loosen some of the clips around this point. Loosen some of these clips that are around the point. And this has to come that way towards your rear seat from out behind this gently. And this is flexible enough. Once you start popping these clips, you should be able to, both for removal and for reinstall. You put a little bend in it here using a couple, both hands. Again, I'll try to prop up and show you that. Okay, I'm going to try to show you here with 2 hands, sliding that plastic clip I was showing you into the receiver when it comes time for install or reinstall. So give me just a second here and see if I can do this for you. I'm pulling back a little bit, pushing in and letting it slide forward. Then, of course, metal clips, we pop it back in. But we're doing the install for the panel, so I'll just show you here again, pulling the clips around it. And I've also loosened the ones back behind it, those metal clips. And so now, same idea, I'm going to give this just a little bit of a bend, pull it back and out. And that's the clip we're talking about, if you can see that again right there. Okay, back to the driver's side. Let's pop that baby out. And then inside there, if you can see it, there's our hex head. I'll go after that here with my ratchet and we'll pull that out. Okay. All right, there's the hex head bolt that came out of there. You can see up in there. And the cap. I'll keep those things together. Don't lose those. I tend to do that. Again, that'll be a 7mm for you when you want to go in after that. So on the trim piece first, it's pretty easy. Just get your fingers in there a little bit. And then start the tool in behind. I'm using my thumb pulling down a little bit and my index finger pulling out a little bit. Got the tool behind there. And then just pop out towards me using hands and tool. And the whole thing comes out just like that. No problem. Okay, next step, again, if you recall, I pointed out right here on the passenger side, there's a plastic clip back in here that clips to this top piece, and we need to slide it out to dismount this first piece that creates the pocket. But again, to do that, let's pop the metal clips that are around it. All right, pull, you can't see it, but I'm going to pull the clips. You heard it right there, that are between the seat and the console tub. You'll need those because we need to get in. These spaces right here need to be loosened up for this top piece to come off. You don't need to remove the whole panel back there behind the seat, but you definitely want to pull those clips at least right here, and then towards the bottom of the seat right back there. And I think I got those already. The only other thing I'm going to do here for running this extension, I'm going to pull this panel. They're flexible, just be a little gingerly, and I'm going to bring it forward to the brake pedal so that I can work in there. You don't need to remove your cup holders. You don't need to remove this tray. And this whole piece is going to come out from underneath the utilities here, the USB ports and my trailer brakes and the inverter outlet, etc. So this all stays intact. This is going to come out from underneath it. I went ahead and started on this side and got things loose because it's just really difficult to try to do this one-handed, but I'll see if I can do it here. Again, using my plastic tools instead of screwdrivers or putty knives, just popping it in there. You could hear the metal clip release, and then I'm going to just give it a little bit extra underneath. You can hear it and see it pop up a little bit. And I'm being somewhat gentle with a little bit of force, and that popped the pieces back here on both sides. And now it's just a matter of popping the rest up. As you can hear, I'm trying to do it by hand, gently. There it goes. All right, one more plastic tab down in here that we need to get out. Okay, I'm going to show you here before we actually pull it out. I wanted to Give you a little bit of insight. You can see, I think I told you there's a plastic plug right here. No metal attached to that one like the rest of the panels back here. Basically, that needs to come out. So there we go. Pretty simple. I gave it just a little pressure. We are now totally loose, as you can see. Okay, I have the console almost the way up. Gonna need to pop that off. That'll just give me a little more room. I'll take care of that. Again, I need 2 hands. I want to make sure I hang on to the console while I'm doing this, but pop that little baby right there too, give you a little more slack in setting the top tray off to the side. But you can see there's at least slack to get it this far on that harness. Okay, I pulled the little zip tie out of the hole there, gave myself a little extra space to work in and move the tray over. I opted not to pull the plug. I guess I could have mentioned that beforehand. When I first looked at this a couple weeks ago, that's the first thing I did is come in from the passenger side and figure I'll just unclip it. It's kind of hard to work in there until you can get this much room. And at least for speaking for me, I have more bad luck than good luck sometimes dealing with these little things. I'd be afraid of busting off a little safety latch part of this plug. A lot of these factory plugs have an additional safety catch that has to go first, and it's sometimes hard to tell whether you pinch pull, push and pull, lift and pull. To me it was a lot easier, and these are replaceable too, by the way, probably for a lot less money than replacing that. So, and there you can see the whole wiring harness that you just want to be careful of when you pull the top off. Okay, we've got the cable for the mic extension up through the hole with the other cables that were already there. Let me point out a couple of things from doing the radio install last week. If you weren't aware, I guess most folks might be, but if it's your first time installing a radio, and I don't think this is specific to Midland, but certainly with the Midland antenna cables, I think most antenna cables, you can disconnect this larger diameter fitting from the cable itself right here, this hex head. And this obviously being smaller diameter, much easier to run through firewalls behind your panels and consoles, and obviously much easier coming up to that hole. The plug connector there for the positive and ground, that obviously a little difficult too coming up, but again, that's where this tool came in very handy. A little trick for you that I did very specifically once I ran this extension today, just now, while I had the camera off. Sorry I couldn't quite keep the camera going at the same time I needed 2 hands. What I did is I ran this past, instead of trying to pull this plug up or try to bend it and get it to curve up, I don't want to break this little tab, obviously, that locks it into the radio. So what I did is I ran past the hole just enough to where I could see this. I grabbed the fish hook underneath it. Let's see if I can get you some lights there. To where I made a little bend in it, if that makes sense, like that. So this piece was still down underneath the console, but I grabbed that piece, if I can get some light on that for you. I grabbed that and was able to pull that up, grab enough slack from that end, and then gently work this piece up and through the hole without busting anything. So there you go. I realized as I was editing the video, I had already pulled the tape off and failed to mention, both for pulling this extension cable and the original install, when I pulled the Midland harness, I put tape over the little plug pin, the little locking pin for these clips. Just a little extra tape there. I did that before I pulled it through the hole, just to make sure we didn't break that piece off. Okay, I've opted to bring the extension for the microphone into that hole I just created there. All I did was grab a 3/8 drill bit, start with, and then used a utility knife and a little X-Acto blade together, and do as best I could a square hole, and just a little bit at a time to make sure I had at least the smallest fit possible, if you can see. All right, there's the finished end. Before I start tucking things back in, I'll end up tucking all the wires back up and tie them nice and tight back up in underneath here, so nothing will hang out underneath like that. It's all loose right now. And then when the panel goes back in, it'll end up hiding that and recreate the pocket. We'll show you that when it's done. But I just made a couple little holes in there, and that should tuck behind. There's enough of a gap there. that the zip tie will be nice and tight, and I can just plug and play. Not that I'll need to be undoing that very often, but the cord will then now stay nice and tucked into that pocket. All right, before I start buttoning things up, I went ahead and just zip tied a little bit of the excess power cord and then the excess microphone extension cord. I'm just going to tuck those in there. That way I don't have any of that loose wires you saw in the previous part of the video, the stuff that slides laterally as you drive underneath. Now, we won't see that stuff. I did the same with the antenna cable spooled up there. Just lay it in there, and the excess is all tied up. This piece will go first, and we want to just gently slide the front pieces in, and then I'll work around to the sides. You can see I'm just going to try to get it in there gently where it fits both sides. And before I allow it to drop all the way down, I'll stop the camera, and I'm going to go around here and just make sure we get that piece in there nice and tight on both sides. Then I can snap it down, and these two pieces, there's one behind it that'll line up. The holes are lined up for that plug, that clip right there, and of course the rest of the clips. So top piece is ready to be snapped down inside. Okay, all right, here's the side driver side piece. Just again, making sure we get these two pieces in here to snap gently, and I'm going to run over to the other side and do that before we snap the rear part down and before we snap the top two clips in. Let me go around to the other side. Okay, same thing, passenger side. We're just going to make sure these two pieces come together nice and gently and neatly. There we go. Okay, I ran over to the driver's side and worked on that clip right there on that piece. We'll just have to pop in this one here on this side so that all of these pieces come together. We need that hole to line up with the one behind it, and then all of these clips can then go in. So we'll just pop that down in. All right, now that we've got the top piece snapped in, I've propped the camera up so you can see. I'm on the passenger side again, obviously. I know I showed you earlier in the video, right behind here there is a little plastic slide-in piece that has to go in before we can do all the rest of those metal clips. So I'll do that for you here. Again, just a little bit of slight pressure in the middle. Hopefully you can see that in the camera view. I'm going to pull out a little bit so that it gets in behind it and then slides forward. Hopefully you saw that it slid in forward. Now it's just a matter of snapping all the metal clips as you can hear them going. Make sure I got the ones behind the seat. Last piece on this side is the metal trim piece, and that's pretty simple to just get it in there nice and lined up, and then straight forward, snaps right in. All done with the passenger side, so now it's just a matter of go around and fix up the other side. All right, I've gone ahead and snapped in the big long panel that creates the pocket here. Don't forget your little bolt, the hex head bolt here, again 7mm. Get that in that hole there and put the cover back on. It's tapered a little thicker at the top end. Snap that baby in, don't forget to put that in. And then we pop the trim piece on. Very simple, just line it up nice and neat to the 3 spots. Push a little bit gently and all done. I purposely left myself a little bit of a gentle arc pigtail and purposely ran it behind the radio and in between the radio and its own mount. That way the microphone extension cable's not in the way of the working side of the box. You can't get hung up, or you won't accidentally pull on it or put anything on it that way. The end of the microphone extension for the Midland radio is tucked inside the pocket up against that front wall, as you saw earlier. But as you can see, you can't see it from outside the pocket at all. So a nice little clean install there. Right there it is plugged in. And we'll tuck the excess, of course. I can just leave that in the pocket. And we're plugged in. Well, I hope you found this video at least somewhat helpful. I should have put a disclaimer at the beginning, but I'll apologize here at the end for the amateur quality. Hope this was of help. Again, thanks for your attention. Be sure to look me up on Instagram.